Notes from the Quiet Corner, a biography by Mama Lawson. 3. The White Borderline. My mother had a gift for finding beautiful places to live, even if the world inside or outside those walls were fractured. I still don't know how she found our house on the borderline of Sherwood and Newburgh in Oregon. It was a massive, beautiful country home sitting on a hill in a neighborhood of about 15 or 16 houses. Technically, our mailing address was Sherwood, but our lives and our schooling were centered across the line in Newburgh. On paper, it looked like a triumph. In reality, our arrival threw the town into a panic. We were the very first family of color to move into the area, and the community's reaction was swift and hostile. They went so far as to hold a town meeting specifically to discuss our presence. Around the same time, the Ku Klux Klan took out a prominent advertisement in the local newspaper, explicitly calling for new members to join. The white neighbors whispered that our presence would destroy the neighborhood, warning each other that property values would plummet simply because we breathed the same country air. I was entirely unprepared for racism this severe. Up until that point, my life had been insulated. My early years were spent in the military, where structures of rank often supersede race, and our brief times in California and Portland had kept me surrounded by people who looked like me. My sanctuary at Maranatha Church had been a place of safety and shared identity. To be dropped as a young child into an elementary school where I was treated like a threat to a local economy was a sudden freezing shock. The outcasts on the hill. The neighborhood kids swarmed the hill, playing in the sun just like my siblings and I wanted to do. But the invisible lines drawn by the adults were absolute. One by one, the families refused to let us cross their threshold. We could stand on the pavement, but we were banned from their homes and their properties. Except for one. Amid the cold shoulders of the neighborhood stood the Rosner family. They refused to participate in the town's quiet hatred. They didn't care about the newspaper ads or the town meetings. They happily opened their front door and welcomed us inside. The Rosners had two sons who were considered a bit of outcasts by the rest of the neighborhood, perhaps because their parents refused to fall in line with the status quo. The oldest son, Tim, was in my class at the elementary school. In a sea of hostile faces, he became my anchor. We established a deep, genuine friendship born out of being the kids who didn't quite fit into the town's perfect white mold. They became our oasis on that hill. To this day, decades later, that bond remains unbroken. They taught me a lesson I carried with me through my entire life, that even in the middle of a storm of prejudice, you only need one open door to find your footing. The Gauntlet on Wheels. Because we lived on that country borderline, getting to school wasn't a simple walk down the street. The bus system had to come to our neighborhood on the Sherwood Hill and drive us into the city of Newburgh. For me, my younger brothers, and the brother just above me, that yellow bus didn't feel like a ride to school. It felt like a cage. The neighborhood children didn't confine their parents' hatred to the whispers on the hill. They bought it into the bus. They were vocally angry that we were breathing their air, occupying their seats. Small, cruel hands reached out to pull our hair. Voices cracked with youth spat racial slurs at us while the bus rumbled down the country roads. We sat close, the three youngest, trying to shield each other from a malice we were too young to understand. But the bus ride was just the prologue. The circle in the yard. When the bus doors folded open at the elementary school, the gauntlet truly began. Before we could even reach the safety of the front doors, A mob of 11 children swarmed us. They surrounded me, cutting off any path of escape. They didn't just throw words this time. They threw stones, rocks, and bottles rained down on me, shattering against the pavement while they spit at me. I looked around desperately for the adults, the protectors, the teachers who were supposed to keep the schoolyard safe. But as I caught their eyes, they calmly turned their backs. They didn't move. They didn't yell. They offered no reprimands. Their silence was a loud, clear permission slip for the children to keep hurting us. In the middle of the chaos, one kid yelled at me, mocking me, telling me I need to go get my brothers involved to protect myself. Even then, with rocks flying and spit on my clothes, something inside me refused to break. I looked at the boy, looked at the crowd, and snapped back. Well, you had to bring 10 other kids just to handle one of me. There's 11 of you surrounding a single child. How much sense does that make? The man with the gun. The hatred wasn't just confined to the children at the elementary school. It was anchored firmly by the adults on our own hill. I remember one morning with terrifying clarity. My brothers and I were walking down the road to catch the school bus, and we had to pass a house that sat just one property over from ours, with only a single neighbor's yard separating us. As we approached, the man who lived there stepped out into his yard. He was holding a shotgun. He stood there, weapon in hand, watching 3 black children walk to the school bus. As we passed by, his voice cut through the morning, quiet, cold, and menacing. No niggers on our yard. Even then, the absolute absurdity of his hatred struck me. We weren't anywhere near his grass. We were just trying to get to the yellow school bus so we can go to class. He was ready to threaten the lives of children over a boundary line we hadn't even crossed. That was the caliber of the reception we received in that small town. Every single day, just trying to get an education meant running a gauntlet of angry children, indifferent teachers, and grown men standing on country lawns with firearms. The oasis on the hill. Despite the anger of the children, the indifference of the teachers and the neighbors standing on their lawns with shotguns, the inside of our home remained an absolute oasis. Step across our threshold and the hostility of Newburgh vanished. In that house, my mother built a fortress of identity. She didn't let the town's hatred define us. Instead, she filled our minds with Black history, teaching us the deep, unshakable strengths of our people. We were raised on the stories of those who came before us, taught that we didn't have to bow our heads or shrink our presence just because people outside our windows chose to see us through a lens of prejudice. But that pride came with a strict mandate: excellence. My mother made it clear that the world was not fair and that we were going to face immense adversity. To survive it, being good enough was a luxury we could not afford at all. She taught us a lesson that would anchor my entire academic life. We had to be excellent, just to match the mediocrity of the children around us. We had to outwork, outwrite, outperform everyone else just to be seen as equals. C's were definitely not allowed in our house. So, I became the best. Driven by the standards set in our living room, I turned the schoolyard into a proving ground. I won awards for my writing, I excelled in sports, and dominated my classes. I couldn't control whether the neighbors liked me, but I could control the scoreboard. Yet, the trophies didn't buy popularity. The other students were simply not allowed to befriend me. Their parents' rules kept them at a distance. Throughout my entire elementary school existence, My world of safety remained tiny. My friends were only the kids from my church, my own siblings, and Tim Rosner. We were a small, tight circle, holding the line against the town on the hill. It wasn't until I finally crossed the threshold into junior high school that the ice began to thaw, and the world finally started to open up.